Hey, this is Heather. I am here with CSAE's Best Minds and Associations podcast, and I have a special guest with me today, Ricki Braswell, CAE with Beyond Coaching. Hi, Ricki.
Good morning. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. I know you from back in the day. We worked together, and that goes back over a decade, which is insane.
It is.
But you've been working in nonprofits for over 20 years in both national, international, and state clients. And you have now moved into coaching. Can you tell us about your coaching services?
Yeah. So after more than, I keep wanting to say 20 so that it doesn't sound like as much, but now, it's a lot. So it's close to 30. But after more than 20 plus years as a nonprofit executive, which is still where my heart is and it's still how I kind of think of myself, I spent a lot of time doing turnarounds in nonprofits. You and I worked together on an organization that had a complete overhaul. And so I thought, I could go to another not-for-profit as an executive and help them right-size their business or grow. Or I could think about the key aspects to what helped that be successful, and I could pursue that and help multiple not-for-profits at the same time. So I went ahead and pursued opening a coaching business. I did that 3 years ago, and now I work with both not-for-profit and for-profit clients. And as we talk about coaching, we'll talk a little bit more about sort of the nuances of it. For me, in my business, we focus on helping people attain their growth goals. And we do that with strategy and leadership coaching specifically. So my philosophy is that leadership and strategy, work together to support people helping to achieve their growth goals. So that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years. And it's been a really fun adventure.
Nice. Now, some people are thinking to themselves, oh, I don't need coaching. I have a mentor and this person is helping me. And I don't need any of that. So can you tell us the difference between coaching and mentoring?
Absolutely. So I get a lot of questions about that. The common things are coaching, mentoring, consulting, and then sometimes training and therapy. Those are the other, or counseling. Those are the things that come up. So there are really pretty distinct differences between coaching and mentoring. So let me tell you what mentoring traditionally is and what coaching traditionally is, and then how sometimes people would blur the lines a little bit depending on the relationship. So a mentor usually is somebody who has walked that path, the path that you want to walk. They are maybe a subject matter expert, and and they've done it before you. And so they're imparting their wisdom to you. They're sharing some of their experiences with you. They're modeling some behaviors for you, and they're guiding you through that process. And so traditionally you're going to somebody who has already walked that path for you. Where coaching, the coach may or may not have the same background that you do. And coaching is based on inquiry. It's outcome oriented. It's really goal focused. So you would go to a coach and you might have a business goal. There's different kinds of coaching. But for me, my clients would normally come to me and say, hey, we're a successful business, but we've gotten to this level and we want to get to the next level. So as a coach, I'm partnering with them. There's a direct action that we're working toward. It's future oriented. I'm actually really encouraging them to utilize critical thinking skills. There are some challenges that come along with that. I may not have performed in the same area as their goal. For example, I work with people in healthcare, and yet I have never owned a healthcare practice. But the directive for coaching is forward. It is future thinking. It is helping the client to create new paths, new ways of thinking, new ways of performing. It's non-judgmental. So the relationship is going to be different than that of the relationship with a mentor who is going to use their own experience to garner that relationship together.
Okay, that's a really great information, because I think some people have the thought that, and coach needs to be in this industry and they need to know what's going on in my industry. And really, like you said earlier, it's inquiry based. And so it's about, everybody has those answers, right? In themselves, it's getting to that answer. And I think that's part of what your coaching would be.
And people like that, Heather. I mean, honestly, I worked in in dentistry as a nonprofit exec, and then I've obviously worked in nonprofit. Although I have clients outside of those two, those are the two things that that's usually the two bases that people come to me from, either from a not-for-profit sector or from a healthcare sector, because that's normally what they think. Oh, she's familiar with those two. And that's fine. I don't necessarily have to be familiar with it. It probably helps me feel comfortable, but the reality is regardless of the sector, I mean, I've coached a rocket scientist. I've coached people in engineering. I know that was really cool. People in engineering, lots of people from different backgrounds. What I have to be able to do as a coach is to be able to ask the questions that they need to explore, not just what I'm curious about.
Yeah. Like, what do rocket scientists do?
Yeah, I know. That was an interesting first time inquiry when we had that first conversation. I was like, get out. I can't wait to learn more about this. But yeah, literal rocket scientist.
Sure. And what should someone prepare for regarding coaching, like big revelations or meeting goals or self-discovery? Like, what can you walk us through what a successful coaching, not session, but because I can't imagine that in one session, somebody's gonna be like, oh, I know how to run everything for the rest of my life. So what would a successful coaching term look like?
Yeah. So, different there. We will at some point talk about what to look for in a coach and some of the stipulations that you want to think about. But, the time frame that someone would engage with a coach largely depends on their goal and their comfort level. Personally, I don't work with clients for less than 6 months. And that's not because I want to drag something out. It's mostly because the clients that come to me are looking to significantly vault their businesses or themselves within the business. And so it's not something that happens overnight. They usually have some big goals, and it usually takes a little bit of time to get there. So I think what somebody needs to be prepared for is when people come to a coach, they don't always know exactly what their goal is. And that's okay. Or we start with sort of a concept of it is, I want to improve my leadership skills. That's a pretty broad umbrella, right? So part of what the person should expect is that the coach will partner with them to help them really fine tune what their goal is and why that goal is important and how their life would look different if they achieve that goal, and what are some of the things that stand in the way of achieving that goal. And those things come out, there may be some of that may come out in a single session. Some of it may come out over multiple sessions. We may think, oh, the thing that stands in the way of this is time and money. Pretty typical things that stand in the way of goals. But then as we're working through and maybe we address some resource issues, we may get further down the line and we may discover, actually one of the things that's standing in the way is I don't have a lot of energy around this kind of thing, whatever, something is. I don't have a lot of energy around, figuring out how a fax machine works or IT solutions or something like that. And so the coach will partner with the client to help them discover some of those things. And then even more so to help them figure out, so do we let that derail us, or what are some other options there? So part of what somebody should expect in coaching is a continual discovery cycle. And then, focusing on what are you good at and what are the strengths, and then what are the things that are standing in your way, and how can you think about those things differently?
Okay. I should have probably asked this prior to that, because if we were going to build on the conversation, what question should we be asking a coach to get the best fit?
So I like this kind of question. For one, with anybody whether you were hiring a coach, a trainer, a consultant, if you were, getting into a mentoring relationship, the fact of the matter is that there are two things that I think are going to be important. One is just overall feel. How do you feel in a conversation with this person? Because my clients all come to me for business reasons. They all are C-suites or executives, own their own businesses. They're all coming from a business standpoint. At some point in time in the relationship, they're going to tell me about some things that, how their business affects their personal, whether it's work-life balance or it's, how to manage stress. Something personal is going to come up in that conversation or during that relationship. So it's super important that the client feels that it's a good fit, that I listen to them, that I'm not judgmental, that I'm not superior to them, that I am really a good fit as a partner with somebody they're going to tell me a lot of stuff about themselves and about their businesses. So that's kind of a number one thing. A number two thing is, I think it's important that the coach helps the client understand, what is leading them to coaching. So is coaching a good fit? Is that the tool that they need? Or is it mentoring or training or consulting or counseling? So that's really important. And then I would ask this is an unregulated industry, and there are a lot of people who call themselves coaches. So in addition to fit kinds of things, and I would tell you that if a coach doesn't do I don't charge to do an exploratory call with somebody. It's about 45 minutes. And if a coach won't do a free exploratory call, I wouldn't sign up with that coach, because fit's a really important thing. And also you need to see the coach's style. But the second thing is what credentialed that person to be a coach. So right now, anybody can call themselves a coach. And there doesn't matter, right? I could just pull that out of anywhere. There isn't the International Coaches Federation. They are the widely recognized certifying body for coaches. They do have approved courses and curriculum. So I don't necessarily think there are lots of people who call themselves coaches who are not certified, and that's okay. There's multiple levels of certification. I don't necessarily know that. I know great coaches who aren't certified, so that you have to necessarily be certified, but I would want to know, what did my coach do to qualify them as a coach? So for example, I took a postgraduate course that was sanctioned by ICF at University of Miami, and it's a year-long course. So that helped me build the skills to understand the difference of when, what do I ask my clients? So I know that they want coaching versus they need counseling or they need something else. So that would be something that I would ask. The other thing I might ask is, I might ask my coach, what do they specialize in? So there's life coaching, there's career coaching, there's relationship coaching, there's all kinds of different, nuances in coaching. And so I would be curious about, what does that coach think that he or she specializes in? Yeah, those would probably be the three things. Is it a good fit? What qualifies them to be a coach? And then what do they specialize their coaching in?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I know on your website, you mention a lot of leadership coaching, because you've been in that position, that CEO level in nonprofits, where it's lonely, especially, in the nonprofits, that you're the only one, and it's you and a board, or you and like one staff member. Like, who do you talk to? And, because there are going to be times where you're just like, oh my gosh, these people are driving me bananas. And your spouse is like, I can't, if I hear about Joe one more time. So it's great to have somebody that, a coach that can sit there and say, okay, so is this like a long-term thing, or, what are you thinking about this situation? And just, I think it's great to have somebody in that position that can guide you and help you along, as well as being kind of like a springboard of, complaints.
Yeah. My niche has been traditionally, I work with executives, so it's either the owner or the CEO in the C-suite level. And then with some of my clients, I actually work for the organization, especially my not-for-profit clients. And so sometimes I actually do some training and coaching with middle managers. I love that area because I remember this, I remember the squeeze, I guess, of being in charge, even if you're a project manager, you're solely responsible for the project, or you're responsible for this team that's under you, but you have layers of people above you. And so you're kind of squished. So I have a special place in my heart for that level of leadership as well. But I really identify with the lonely at the top kind of thing, especially in privately owned business or in not-for-profits, because it is a lonely thing. I mean, you can't complain to your board, and you can't complain to your team. And I can tell you that your spouse does get fatigued about that. So they do. I mean, I have had those moments where, I mean, just even in whatever industry you're in, I mean, we all know this, right? That like your spouse at some point in time you say, hey, I'm having dinner with these leaders. Do you want to have dinner with us? And he's like, if we're going to talk about teeth, I'm good to miss that one. For the years that I've spent in dentistry. So yes, there's a fatigue factor for everybody around. And it does help to have somebody, and I think this is a real benefit of coaching, to have somebody who has a bit of an objective perspective, who's not there to challenge whether you're right or wrong, but that who just simply asks the questions like, how would you know if you were right or wrong? You know, what might the long-term aspect of this be? What's the risk reward on this? Will this get you fired, or do you just fear that this would get you fired?
Sure.
So some of those kinds of conversations I think can be really helpful.
Yeah. Because there is a consequence, right? Whether it's positive or negative to every decision. And we usually only think consequence negative, but there really can be a positive consequence, which is nice. But the word consequence is just a heavy word. So
yeah.
What if we're in this coaching and we've been in it for a couple months and we're just, I know I can do this sometimes. You know, I try to work on mental health on my own and therapist and coaching and different relationships that I've had. And I know that when things get tough for me, I'm like, they're terrible. I just don't know. I can't do this. And I have to really sit back and evaluate myself that is it me, or am I uncomfortable? Is it who I'm working with? How can we tell and answer those questions of, is this not working, or is this just, I'm uncomfortable and I need to power through it?
I love this train of thinking. I really like this. It's interesting. So one of the key things with coaching, as opposed to some of the other things that we mentioned, is that it's really client driven, and the coach is really a partner with you. So, and that sounds very celestial being, and you know me, so you know that I'm pretty rooted, but, so I try not to be vague with those descriptions, but specifically the growth in coaching is client driven and is about self-discovery and self-reflection. And so, you know, those things of like, how do others see me? How do I see myself? What am I most afraid of? What's standing in the way? Like that kind of litany of types of questions carry a level of vulnerability, which usually makes us feel uncomfortable. So at some point in time in a coaching relationship, my client will become self-aware. And by that, I mean, let's say just in a CEO position, we start with always looking at our team. Hey, I don't think I have a very supportive board, or I maybe don't have the right team to help us climb to the next level. You know, those are pretty typical things. And so we start to look externally at external factors. And part of the discovery and coaching is, how do we know, you know, how can we go through the process and determine, is this the right fit? Are these the right people? Is your board being supportive? What do you need from them? But at some point in time in the coaching, we become self-aware and reflective. And the best leaders have a level of vulnerability around that. And we have to say, oh goodness, here are the things that stand in my way. Gosh, I don't have a lot of patience or tolerance around XYZ. So there is, like, I know this from personal experience. And so so the coach should not be driving the client into any direction. The coach should be supporting the client in reaching their goal. So if the client hit a frustration level, if you came back and hit that level, or I felt like, Heather's really not connected in this, or she's had a lot of really strong reactions to some of the questions that I've asked during this session, or I just don't feel like her energy is like really up. My job as the coach is to say that. So where are you? Kind of what's going on? What's the feeling that you described? And hopefully we have a good enough relationship where you say, I'm feeling fatigued. I'm not feeling like I'm progressing. You know, whatever's happening for you, hopefully you share that with the coach. And then the coach says, okay, so what do you think you need in this moment? You know, and the things that I would ask my client is, you know, let's take a step back. And good trained coaches know this, because there is fatigue that happens. Absolutely. There's fatigue that happens. There is. And so a good trained coach will try to put in some reflection, sometimes during a normal coaching cycle where we would say, maybe it's 4 sessions in, maybe it's, 2 sessions in, maybe it's 5 months from now, but you might say, so let's go ahead and take, 20 minutes of this session, maybe 5 minutes of this session to say, are you moving forward with the growth that you seek? Am I pushing you in a direction, or am I assuming an agenda or creating the agenda, or do you still feel like you're in charge of that? Okay. And, and if you're not sure, if you think the coach is pushing it, you should ask them, because that is a good reflective time. So my clients, I will do a check-in and say, what do you think you've improved upon? What are the things that are still bothering you? Where's that fatigue coming from? Where's that frustration? And sometimes a client will say, it's coming too fast. Okay. So how could we slow the pace, or how could we make a pace that is tolerable for you? Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I know I did coaching, and I felt like I hit that fatigue point where I was like, stop asking me questions. I don't know the answers. I was just like, I'm so tired. And at the time I had a newborn and working full time. So it was just, it really, you do hit that fatigue. And I don't think I recognized it at the time, but I was just I was like, just give me the answer. I don't care. Just tell me what to do.
Yeah. And it's funny. So a similar kind of thing, when I was going through my coaching class, my course at University of Miami, I hit a fatigue point in learning, because they coach you and you have to agree to be a coachee. And I remember thinking that at one point in time, thinking at some point in time, stop asking me the stupid questions and start giving me some answers. And I think it's probably just you and I, our personality a little bit, but I have clients that are high drivers, and I know that there is a point where they don't have a lot of tolerance. And I will say at that point, okay, what's going on? It's like, I just need some answers. And I'll say, okay, so is this a good time for me to tell you some observations, and then you can tell me whether you agree with me or not. And so sometimes I will say, so I'm, here's an observation that I have, here's some pattern. And a good coach it's not just a constant barrage of questions. It's a question that helps you reflect a little bit deeper, and then you're in a conversation with your coach. But the difference is the coach isn't driving the conversation. And so the best way I can say this is, if you ever have a friend that you sit down and the friend's like, how are you doing? And you're like, I'm doing, I'm having a so-so day. How are you doing? And then that person just jumps off into where they want to go. And then if they want to talk about shoes today, you're talking about shoes. If they want to talk about their child, you're talking about their child. And there's like never another space to come back, versus a person who says, how are you doing? And you're like, oh, I'm doing okay. And they stay with you on that. And they're like, it doesn't sound like your normal chipper self. How's it going? And they're in that conversation. And if the conversation goes to flowers, goes to your job, goes to whatever's going on in your personal life, they're with you in that. That is more a coaching relationship. So the coach is going to stay with you and should be in tune to, how are you feeling about this? And understand when you need to get into the discussion. It's pretty organic, but a well-trained coach should be able to help you get there. And hopefully not have you quit in frustration. at least acknowledge the frustration, so this is what it feels like. So yeah, you're right. But there are different people who have different, skill sets or different approaches. And I do know coaches who are like, I am not answering the question. I'm going to just keep asking the question. I'm like, oh, okay.
Okay. and that maybe somebody needs that, right? I mean, yes, the relationship is, you're not going to be friends with everybody, and not every coach is going to be your cup of tea. So, and it's okay. And just like we would tell our kids or whoever, it's okay not to like everybody. That's fine. You just can't be mean to them. But right. I think that goes beyond the friendship relationships. It can go with working relationships or coaching or physician, whatever it can be.
Yes.
Now, would you say that you found kind of a sweet spot where there how often you're doing coaching sessions, because there is work that you're doing outside of the coaching session. So you're not in the session going, okay, I'm going to walk away and then that's it. And then I'm going to come back next week and then we're going to pick up. So there is work outside. So is there a sweet spot, or is it like everything else? It just depends.
That's a good question. I do think it depends is the answer, but I would say that I think if you are, I have clients that I meet with once a month. Most of those clients, however, are, except for one who is just a dynamo, but most of those clients, we have already been in a longer term coaching relationship, and they achieved several of their goals. And I kind of think of it like a maintenance program. They have told me, I don't need to meet as frequently. I know what I'm doing. And these are like touch bases where they are sort of giving themselves the time to recap what they've done and then to reframe what they still want to do. And that's what we're doing kind of on a month to month. I'm at that point in time, I'm probably an accountability partner for them as much as anything else. And sometimes, I say I'm like part cheerleader, part accountability partner, part brainstorming partner. So I think those folks that are like that. Now, but the client has to know themselves. So they have to, it's like anything else. How much time and attention and energy and focus do they need in order to move them toward the goal? And so for most of my clients, when they come to me, they are meeting at least twice a month. Some of them are meeting every week, but most of them are meeting at like every other week is usually it. And as you are an experienced person who's in coaching, you hit the nail on the head that most of the coaching work doesn't necessarily happen in the coaching session, which is, imagine trying to sell that as a value. Most of it happens when the client is back in their real life and they're actually thinking about things. So most of the time, I would say frequently, a subject matter that comes up during the coaching session and that we'll explore in a coaching session, especially like in leadership and strategy growth like that, the client will wonder about it. We will have a conversation about it during a coaching session, but it could be 2-3 weeks. It could be sometimes a month or more later that there's an experience that happens in the client's life, and they will come back to the next session and go, oh my gosh, so this happened. This difficult conversation landed on my doorstep. And I normally would have reacted like this, but I remember what we talked about and I actually approached it like this. And so then the coaching session at that point is about, what was different about it and how did it feel and how happy are you, if you had to give yourself a grade, how happy are you with that? The best thing about home office.
Yeah. Animals.
The best thing. So that would be kind of the biggest thing, is helping the client determine what is the best fit for them in terms of how frequently do they need to meet. And I try to be fairly flexible. I mean, there are coaches that sell like by the package, like I have a certain amount. I customize everything to my client. So if they say, we need to do it more frequently, I'm like, okay, let's do that. And it does depend for sure. But I think it's also again, the coach being able to help the client check in and say, are we moving at a pace that's comfortable for you? Is this too fast? Is this too slow? What adjustments do we need to make? And I normally do that no matter how many sessions a client has. And again, I'm doing a lot of work with a company, so there's usually multiple things in that, but I usually will check in and say, how's this going? Do you need more or less? Do you feel like you're being supported between the sessions, that kind of thing?
Do you do things outside of coaching that during that session, like email check-ins or text messages or anything like that, that maybe you should be looking for with a coach?
So I don't know about other coaches. So I know a lot of coaches. In fact, I remember one of our instructors during my course said, don't, you're not a nanny. Don't send an email or a text message and be like, hey, I was just thinking about you. So it's interesting. I would say, like, if she ever listens to this podcast, she's going to be like, don't mention me by name. But I would say that for my coaching, I don't take a load of clients So I have a very specific amount of clients that I take. I also do, again, a lot of leadership training in that too. So it's the relationship that I have with a lot of my clients, I would say 50% of my clients, is coaching the CEO one-on-one, and then also doing some training with the team around, some strategy and leadership training around the team. Because I believe it doesn't matter what your title is. I believe everyone has an opportunity, should have an opportunity in an organization to be a leader. So I believe from the most green person who answers the phone to the most 3-letter title you have, everybody in the organization has to be able to find their leadership stride in order for the organization to grow. So for me, I probably, if I don't hear from something, or if I know that the client is going into something particularly difficult, like they're doing a contract renegotiation, or they've had a big change on their board or something like that. Yeah, I would say that sometimes I might send an email or a text message and just say, hey, just thinking about you, and hoping that conversation went as you planned it. And, if you need if you need to book an extra time or something like that, we can do that. But again, my packages tend to be different, as I'm not really charging by the session. So, and I did that specifically because I thought, I don't know, for me, it felt like charging by the session, like that was like a little bit like a payphone. Like, what happens if this person just needs 30 minutes to say, I've got to download something and I need a perspective. It's not a great week, or it's a great week. I need a perspective. I don't want to be like, oh yes, so you have to Venmo me $200. That just was my choice of the way I wanted to be in a relationship with my clients.
Okay. But they can reach out to you though. Like if something's coming up, you're not going to be like, no.
Absolutely. And I use I use Acuity. I use a scheduling app. And so my clients have a link to it, and they can see that, where there's some time. Nice. But normally they'll just text me. Okay. And they'll say, something's coming up, or, I had something, especially when it has to do with employee relations or board relations or member relations, those kinds of things come up, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Ricki, for joining us today on the CSAE podcast. And if you want to touch base with Ricki at any point, definitely go to our website at transitionbeyond.com. Or Ricki, do you want to include an email?
Email me directly at Ricki, RICKI, at transitionbeyond.com. Happy to answer any questions. And like I said, I do exploratory calls all the time, and they're completely complimentary. If there's something that you're curious about, whether coaching would be a good fit for you, or leadership coaching and training would be a good fit for you or your team, you can reach me by email or by my website, and you can book an exploratory call that works with your schedule.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for all the knowledge. It was a great episode, and I can't wait to re-listen to it, because I know that I'm going to still get some pearls of wisdom out of it. So thank you so much, Ricki.
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Bye.
Bye.